Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have hemlock, also known as poison hemlock, or the plant that killed Socrates. This highly poisonous plant belongs to the same family as carrots do. Originally found in Europe and North Africa, hemlock is now a cosmopolitan plant and can be found worldwide. Hemlock has long been regarded as one of the most poisonous plants in the world, and it has been used for centuries, including in ancient Greece as a means of executing prisoners, i.e. the whole Socrates thing. Hemlock is poisonous to both humans and animals because of the numerous alkaloids that are present within the entire plant, and sometimes skin reactions happen just by touching the plant's leaves. All in all, this plant is one to stay the heck away from. In our number 9 spot today, we have devil's snare, also known as angel's trumpet or Jimson weed. There's an old saying that goes along with these plants, saying that ingesting them makes people, quote, hot as a hare, blind as a bat, dry as a bone, red as a beet, and mad as a hatter. Their words, not mine. Anyway, apparently this is actually kind of true. People will voluntarily ingest this plant because of the hallucinogenic effects, but I have to ask, at what cost? This plant can make people very aggressive and combative, and they can become a huge danger to not only themselves but others as well. Most people who ingest this plant will end up needing medical attention and possibly even sedation. The worst of it is that there have been reports of people going into comas and even passing away after having tea made from the leaves of this plant. I think it's probably just better to leave this one alone and find a safer way to pass the time. In our number 8 spot today, we have water hemlock. Water hemlock is closely related to poisonous hemlock we already talked about, which was truly not good, and to be honest, this one is not any better. Water hemlock has also been deemed the most violently toxic plant in North America, so I feel like knowing all of these things combined is just enough to concede on ever needing to be anywhere near this plant at all. Because this plant too belongs to the carrot family, it can sometimes appear a little too closely to parsnips and celery, which obviously would provide quite a dilemma. This plant is infused with cyclotoxin, especially in the roots, and after consuming the plant, the potentially deadly symptoms will start to appear quite quickly. The symptoms include things like painful convulsions, abdominal cramps, and nausea, and unfortunately most people who consume water hemlock end up passing away. There are people who have survived, however, but those who do are usually left dealing with amnesia or lasting tremors. In our number 7 spot today, we have white snake root. Also known as richweed, this species of poisonous plant is endemic to the eastern and central regions of North America. This plant is herb-like. It's actually a perennial herb that is common in woodlands and brush, and although it's a relatively smaller plant, it certainly packs a punch when we talk about the poison. It's quite a beautiful plant and is actually, for some reason, commonly used for landscapes and such, but despite that, it is extremely poisonous and even deadly to both humans and animals. Most of the plant is comprised of a toxin known as trematol, which, when consumed, can cause trembles or what is known as, quote, milk sickness. The good news is that poisonings by this plant have dropped significantly in modern history, but in the 1800s it was responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths, and rumor has it, potentially even the death of Abraham Lincoln's mother. In our number 6 spot today, we have the sandbox tree. This tree has a name that makes it sound like it would be a good, nice, fun time, but that is just simply not the case. This tree belongs to the evergreen family and is usually found in the tropical regions of North and South America, which includes the Amazon rainforest. This tree can be easily recognized by the many dark, pointy spines that it has on the trunk, which is the first part of the tree that should probably be a red flag. These pointy spikes are probably the least of your concerns with this tree, however, as the sap that comes from it is corrosive and will burn your skin like it's stream cleaner. The sap has been used by fishermen to poison fish, which kind of seems backwards, and it's also been used by indigenous tribes to poison the tips of arrows. And just to add one more, less horrifying but still really dangerous thing to watch out for with these guys is their fruit. Basically, they start out small, but once they ripen, they explode with a ton of force. Like so much force that it's actually common to hear of them injuring people or livestock that were nearby. In our number 5 spot today, we have wolfsbane. Also known as devil's helmet or queen of poisons, this plant is endemic to the northern hemisphere and is often found in mountainous meadows where the soil is rich in nutrients and has good drainage. All parts of this plant are considered toxic, including the roots of it, and it is said that the symptoms of this poisoning present themselves quite quickly. Symptoms start with more gastrointestinal sort of problems. They then lead to tingling and numbness in the mouth and face, sometimes accompanied with burning sensations in the abdomen. Usually this is followed by the inability to speak, low blood pressure, and heart rhythm abnormalities, with death usually typically occurring within 2 to 6 hours, mostly as a result of complete paralysis of the respiratory system. There have even been some reports of death occurring just minutes after consuming this plant. All in all, you know what I'm about to say, don't ingest this plant, just stay away from it. It's for your health. In our number 4 spot today we have Nerium oleander. This is quite a common plant due to its beautiful flowers, so it might be a bit surprising to see it on this list today. This plant has earned itself the title of being one of the most poisonous commonly grown garden plants, so make sure you remember what it looks like. Ingestion of this plant affects the gastrointestinal system, the heart, and the nervous system, so it's really just hitting all the important things in one foul swoop. The gastrointestinal effects are the usual nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain. The cardiac symptoms are characterized by a racing heart at first that then slows to below normal, and extremities can sometimes become cold and pale due to the poor circulation. The nervous system symptoms are really where things get a little crazy, however, as they may appear as drowsiness, tremors, seizures, and even coma that can lead to death. It's also important to note that these flowers are poisonous to both humans and animals, and since they're so common, it's best to watch out for that and maybe keep these guys out of your garden, despite how lovely they look. In our number 3 spot today we have the Australian stinging tree. Australia always knows how to provide when it comes to scary things, and this plant is certainly no exception. This plant has little stinging hairs on it that will deliver an incredibly powerful neurotoxin when touched. The sting from this plant is apparently excruciatingly painful. A woman named Marina Hurley was studying this plant and got stung, and she described her experience as, quote, the worst kind of pain you can imagine, like being burnt with hot acid and electrocuted at the same time. The allergic reaction developed over time, causing extreme itching and huge hives that eventually required steroid treatment. At that point, my doctor advised that I should have no further contact with the plant, and I didn't object. Apparently, the recommended treatment after coming in contact with one of these plants is to wash the stung area with hydrochloric acid and then use wax strips to remove any remaining stinging hairs. If a hair is left over, it could cause pain for months. In our number 2 spot today we have the rosary pea plant. This plant is native to Asia and Australia and is best known for its seeds, which are the most dangerous part of it. The seeds have been used in both jewelry as well as percussion instruments, although not without extreme caution, as it is quite dangerous to do so. It is said that the workers who pierce the seeds in order to be able to thread them can suffer poisoning or even death from something as small as a pinprick, although it's not something that's been widely documented. A toxic dose in humans is apparently only 0.1 milligrams for a 150-pound human, and symptoms include nausea, vomiting, convulsions, liver failure, and death, usually after several days. If the seeds are ingested while they're still intact, it is said that poisoning will not result because of the hard outer shell, but I am definitely not volunteering to test that theory out. These seeds are also toxic to horses, so if you've got a horse, make sure you watch out. In our number 1 spot today we have deadly nightshade. Well, I guess this one really is all in the name. This is one of the most toxic plants that can be found in the eastern hemisphere, with both the foliage and the berries being poisonous. The berries cause problems because they look so harmless and they don't taste all that bad either. Eating just 2 to 5 of these berries is certain enough to be lethal to an adult human, and if one leaf is ingested, that will also be fatal. The symptoms of the poisoning from the deadly nightshade are things like dilated pupils, sensitivity to light, blurred vision, tachycardia, loss of balance, headache, rash, a severely dry mouth and throat, slurred speech, confusion, hallucinations, delirium, and convulsions. So really just a whole bunch of stuff you definitely don't want. At one point there used to be special eye drops made from this plant which would be used by women to dilate their pupils, as this apparently was once seen as an attractive and seductive quality. I feel like even if that was still a desired trait, I probably wouldn't poison my eyeballs, cause that just sounds terrible.
In our number 10 spot we have the manchineel tree. The manchineel tree is one of the most dangerous trees on the planet. It can be found in the Caribbean, South Florida, and Mexico. Apparently, one touch of the tree's sap and you will get blisters. Damn, that's actually terrifying to hear because I love all of those places and I can just foresee a future Mel accidentally, leaning on this tree because I'm out of breath for some reason, because I'm dramatic like that, and I can just imagine that I'm on a walk and need water, and yeah, anyways. Back to the tree. Not only can the sap give you blisters, but if you take a bite of its fruit, you will die. Damn. Christopher Columbus once called the fruit the little apple of death. I wonder if this tree was a source of inspiration for the writer of Snow White. She takes a bite of an apple and Scheiße, she's dead. I'm half German and that's one of the 3 words I know. How embarrassing. Apparently the toxins from this tree are so bad that indigenous people in Florida used to dip arrowheads in the poisonous sap to help kill their enemies. Well, best to memorize how this tree looks and never ever go near it. In our number 9 spot we have the sandbox tree. The sandbox tree honestly hurts my eyes. Does it not hurt your eyes? Perhaps I just have a fear of being stung by 1,000 thorns, but yeesh is this terrifying. The sandbox tree has hundreds if not thousands of thorns all over the tree. The tree is found in different parts of North America and South. Apparently not only are the spikes scary, but also the fruit of these trees tend to explode. The speed of these explosions can be up to 70 miles per second, and anyone near this tree when the fruit explodes can be badly injured. Oh, and one last thing. The sap of this tree is poisonous as well. Lovely. This tree is just awful. Suddenly I'm thankful for the blue spruces beside my house. Never thought I would say that I'm thankful for a blue spruce. In our number 8 spot we have the strychnine tree. The strychnine tree is another poisonous tree, but one that has actually been beneficial to humans over the years. I am someone that hates killing mice, rats, bugs, even ants. Yes, I am that person to step around the ants if I see them in my path. But in the 14th century, the bubonic plague was being transmitted by rat-riding fleas, and so the poison from this tree was used to kill the rats to help stop the spread. Nearly half of Europe had passed from the plague before this poison helped put a stop to its spreading. The tree is found in Southeast Asia. Another fun fact is that it has now been discovered that when used in small doses, the tree can be beneficial to help increase muscular activity and as an antidote to drug and alcohol poisoning. Damn. Arguably, this is one of the best poisonous trees on this list. In our number 7 spot, we have the Cibera odellum. This is a tree that is not necessarily known by its scientific name, Cibera odellum. It's actually more known by its nickname, which I want to tell you, but YouTube doesn't like the word, so let's put an S in front of ooicide. It's known as the ooicide tree, and it can be found in India and in parts of southern Asia. Apparently it was given this nickname because people would take their own life after eating its fruit. We can assume that it was so poisonous and hurt so much that these people found no way out. Wild. Apparently you can usually find these trees near swamps. This feels like another forbidden fruit situation. Perhaps the original Adam and Eve story did have some validity. Maybe God saved Eve after she ate this fruit. Learning about all of these poisonous fruit trees is enough to make me never want to eat any fruit unless it's been pre-screened and sold in a grocery store. No way am I taking a chance in eating any fruit I pick. I would definitely accidentally pick a poisonous fruit tree. That would be very like me. In our number 6 spot we have the bunya pine. This is a tree that you can find in Queensland in northeast Australia. This tree is quite deadly, but not in a poisonous sap or fruit kind of way. Apparently this tree has cones that can be as heavy as 6 kilograms. For perspective, I googled, and 6 kilograms is a little more than 13 pounds. I couldn't find anything that weighed 13 pounds, but I found out that the original iPad weighed 1.5 pounds, so just imagine the weight of 8.6 original iPads in one object. Alright, so now imagine these 8.6 original iPads in one object falling on your head. Yeah, you would definitely be knocked out and have a concussion. Some of you would probably be dead from that impact. I would be included in that bunch most likely. Anyways, this is definitely a tree you want to keep your distance from. In our number 5 spot we have the milky mangrove. The milky mangrove is a plant that grows near water. The plant does not produce milk, however, the tiny florets do look milky in a weird way, like they've been covered in milk. I don't know. I'm probably trying to make it fit when it just doesn't. I wonder where this name came from. Anyways, apparently its sap is the reason that you should be concerned about this tree. The sap has been known to cause irritation, blisters, and just temporary blindness if brought in contact with eyes. Yeah, terrifying. You can usually find these trees in India, Bangladesh, and the south of Australia. Man, too many dangerous trees seem to live in Australia, and they have the big bugs too. When I eventually go to Australia, I'm probs going to wear a hazard suit. In our number 4 spot, we have the Gympie Gympie. Here is another surprisingly poisonous tree that is found in Australia. But before we get into the details, can we just spend a second on its name? The Gympie Gympie. That sounds like something a baby would say when they're trying to say that they're grumpy. I'm gimpy, mommy, I'm gimpy. Whoever came up with the name of this plant definitely had a good laugh to themselves afterwards. Anyways, the Gympie Gympie is found in the rainforest area in the northeast region of Australia. You can identify it by its fuzzy heart-shaped leaves, which honestly sounds the most cute. Upon seeing how cute they are, I immediately wished I had one, until I learned that they are basically like poison ivy. Basically like poison ivy, but cuter. People get severe allergic reactions from them. They cause intense itching and huge hives. Yikes. Why do the prettiest things sometimes sting you the worst? I'm triggered. Okay, but seriously, this has to be the prettiest poisonous plant out there. Name a prettier one in the comment section below. In our number 3 spot, we have the oleander. The oleander tree is a plant found in warmer climates such as California, Florida, and Texas. Apparently, it is grown for its beautiful star-shaped flowers. It's usually seen along highways and in public landscapes, which will most likely make you confused when you hear what I'm about to say next. Its sap can cause numbness and make people faint. I'm sorry, what? Why on earth is this plant in any public space if it can make people potentially faint? I'm terrified. Not only that, but the plant can cause visual problems, rashes, and the craziest one in my opinion, irregular heartbeats. Why on earth we decided, yep, not only should we replant this plant and help it spread around the world, but let's also put it in a public place where it could potentially harm people. Sometimes I am deeply confused as to how people come to decisions like this. The people of this world are such a mystery to me. In our number 2 spot, we have Angel's Trumpet. The Angel's Trumpet is a small tree that honestly is breathtaking. I'm pretty sure this tree was in Alice in Wonderland. I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I saw Alice, so I'm probably wrong. There are many plants though in that movie, so whatever. Anyways, this is a tree that has bell-shaped flowers that look beautiful, but in fact, they can cause severe hallucinations, so that's crazy. These trees can usually be found in Central and South America. They bloom typically year-round, so they are pretty dangerous year-round. Not quite deadly like some of the other trees on this list, but hey, a bad hallucination could put someone in a deadly situation, so perhaps in some cases. They release a poison called tropane alkaloids, and that is what puts people in the hallucinatory state. It's too bad though, because man, are they pretty. I would love to have one in my backyard, but yeah, better not. In our number 1 spot, we have European yew. The European yew, or scientifically known as the Taxus baccata, is a species of evergreen tree. The European yew can be found in the West, Central, and Southern Europe, Northwest Africa, Northern Iran, and Southwest Asia. The tree is usually planted in graveyards. The tree can be recognized by its red berry-like fruit. The tree contains a deadly part that is called taxine. If anybody is injected with taxine, they will be poisoned to death. There are currently no antidotes for yew poisoning. Even though it seems quite scary, it did bring some historical value at one point. Yew wood was used for musical instruments and furniture at one point.
More than 1 million people are being told right now to get out because of this. What you're looking at right now is a satellite image of the eve of Hurricane Florence, a potentially devastating Category 4 hurricane approaching the southeastern coast. Now, from
speak. And the National Hurricane Center is saying we're going to have a Category 5 for maybe a day or two. So watching this, the northern Leeward Islands, you're in trouble right now, unfortunately. We are dealing with a very strong, potentially dangerous storm.
Size of the hurricane. These images captured today by NASA. One astronaut said Florence is so big they could only capture her with a super wide-angle lens. CBS 2's Ted Scouten has more now from Wrightsville Beach in North Carolina.
Number 10. This was a Category 5 major hurricane that struck the Bahamas, Florida, and Louisiana. This is the most destructive hurricane to ever hit the United States until Hurricane Irma surpassed it 25 years later.
By Saturday morning, Andrew was gaining strength as the eye of the hurricane hit the Bahamas with wind speeds of up to 122 miles per hour. Florida lay just 10 hours ahead. Andrew was now 100 miles across.
Is this real life right now? 100 miles is a massive hurricane. At the time, this was the largest hurricane to hit the Bahamas, Florida, and Louisiana. So out of hundreds of years, this hurricane was gonna set all kinds of records, which is very scary for us. This hurricane took the lives of 65 people. Next up, we have a death toll of 230 to 500 people in Mexico when Hurricane Pauline hit back in 1997. Well, she's roaring in this list at number 9. Hurricane Pauline was one of the deadliest Pacific hurricanes to make landfall in Mexico. This storm caused massive flooding and mudslides in some of the poorest areas of Mexico. It is also one of the deadliest Eastern Pacific storms in recorded history. Around 300,000 people were left homeless.
By the time we were able to react, my father and I were pushed out of the house into the river. My mother and sister were not there anymore.
Next up, we have a hurricane that cost a record $125 billion in damages. The effects from this hurricane is still there, it's still happening today, and it took the lives of almost 2,000 people. And we're talking about the horrifying Hurricane Katrina that took the East Coast by storm, in at number 8. Hurricane Katrina was extremely destructive and a deadly Category 5 hurricane that struck the Gulf Coast of the United States back in 2005. My aunt, who actually lived in New Orleans, she still has a house down there, well, she suffered from the storm. My aunt's been in like 2 or 3 hurricanes. New Orleans was 80% underwater. This was the most powerful storm since the 70s when Hurricane Camille hit. This massive hurricane lasted over 1 week and it had winds up to 280 kilometers per hour. Along with the hurricane, it spawned massive tornadoes as well, and the tornadoes made it all the way to Pennsylvania. There was 5 tornadoes in total.
Huge! We gotta get ready to go. Don't back up! Alright, Reed, get in, Reed. I couldn't open the door. Oh my god.
Millions of people were left without electricity, something we take for granted sometimes. The whole east coast of the United States didn't have power. There were hospitals that lost power, and they also lost fresh water for almost 1 week. Imagine needing surgery, but you can't have it because there's no electricity. Really scary event that unfolded that week.
Katrina made landfall.
Now at number 7, we have Hurricane Okeechobee that took place back in 1928. So one of our oldest hurricanes on this list. This devastating hurricane killed around 2,500 people. This hurricane developed off the west coast of Africa and it strengthened into a tropical storm, eventually hitting Guadalupe, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Bahamas, and Florida. It seemed like Florida is always getting hit by these massive hurricanes. There were many places affected by this hurricane, even Atlantic Canada was affected. This is how much impact Hurricane Okeechobee had. There was so much rain and flooding, some areas was 20 feet underwater. Houses and buildings were just swept away.
We didn't know how bad it was or anything, but he asked different people to go and spread the word that there was a hurricane coming.
Now moving on, number 6, we have Hurricane Maria.
Puerto Rico, and the staggering new number out this evening. We have traveled to Puerto Rico so many times since Hurricane Maria hit the island. More than 3 million American citizens live there. The official death toll had been 64. Tonight, that death toll now 2,975 lives lost.
So you heard it just now. Hurricane Maria killed around 3,000 people and it caused almost $100 billion in damages. This was a Category 5 major hurricane that is regarded as one of the worst natural disasters on record to affect Dominican and Puerto Rico. This hurricane hit in 2017, so just last year. Hurricane Maria was actually the 3rd consecutive major hurricane to threaten this area, which is totally insane. It's almost like watching Day After Tomorrow. The 2017 Atlantic hurricane season was a hyperactive and catastrophic hurricane season that totaled up to almost $300 billion in damages, which makes it the costliest bad weather storms in history. There was also well over 3,000 deaths. The 3 hurricanes that year was Hurricane Harvey, Irma, and Hurricane Maria. A massive hurricane that caused $6 billion in damages and killed over 11,000 people along the way. Well, at number 5, we're talking about Hurricane Mitch that struck the Atlantic back in 1998. This hurricane lasted over 2 weeks and it stayed strong throughout its disastrous course. Hurricane Mitch is known to be the 2nd deadliest hurricane in the Atlantic. Mitch formed in the Western Caribbean Sea and it drifted through, gaining strength as it hit Central America. Because of this storm, it was estimated that Honduras was set back 50 years of its economic development. That's because of how costly the storm was. Imagine a storm that cost billions of dollars, and now instead of taxes and money going towards schools, healthcare, and other things, it's going into rebuilding structures. Historical buildings were also affected. Buildings that were over 350 years old were destroyed. You can't build back history. The deadliest hurricane in US history, but not the deadliest in the world, blows its way into number 4 on our list. We're talking about the Great Galveston Hurricane. I think it's time we stop giving these hurricane human names and calling it the Great Hurricane. This hurricane took place in the 1900s. It was a Category 4 hurricane that killed around 6,000 to 12,000 people. This hurricane actually traveled a very long distance and it killed people on the east coast of Canada as well. The hurricane lasted almost 20 days, which is absolutely insane. The winds were up to 230 kilometers per hour. Galveston, Texas was flooded up to 12 feet of water. That's deeper than the deep end in most swimming pools. Almost every house in Galveston was destroyed. 30,000 people in the city were left homeless out of the total population of 38,000. People tried to evacuate their home, and when the storm was finally over, a lot of people found their homes totally destroyed or on its side. The Great Hurricane of 1780 destroys its way through the Atlantic, taking no mercy in at number 3. This hurricane is the deadliest Atlantic hurricane on record. Between 20,000 and 22,000 people died in this freak of a storm. Mother Nature is a bitch sometimes. Specifics on the hurricane track and strengths are unknown because the official Atlantic Hurricane Database only went back to 1851. But it was predicted that the winds were up to 320 kilometers per hour. It would be the highest winds in history. The Great Hurricane of 1780 hit Barbados with top winds of 320 kilometers per hour, totally destroying the island. The wind was so powerful, bark was actually coming off trees. It was just being peeled off. About 4,500 people died in Barbados. A fleet of 40 French ships involved in the American Revolutionary War was struck during the hurricane. Several hundred soldiers died. Now at number 2, we have the 1975 Typhoon Nina, which is known in the Philippines as Typhoon Bebeng. This storm killed over 231,000 people. There were many collapsed dams due to heavy flooding that caused an even bigger problem. This powerful storm lasted for 1 week and winds got up to 250 kilometers an hour, and it cost China and Taiwan over $1.2 billion, and that was back in 1975. Over 600,000 people were displaced. After the storm, you couldn't even recognize the city. Everything was moved and totally damaged.
Roofless houses and floods in the Rinconada area of the Bicol region, where Typhoon Nina made its second landfall. Thousands of Bicolanos fled their homes to evacuation centers on Christmas Day as Typhoon Nina sustained winds of 185 kilometers per hour.
With up to 500,000 people who lost their lives back in 1970, we have the devastating Bola cyclone. And this Bola cyclone struck East Pakistan and India's West Bengal. Bola cyclone comes into this list at number 1. This storm has been known as the deadliest tropical cyclone ever recorded and one of the deadliest natural disasters as it killed 500,000 people. This storm was powerful and it lasted for 10 days. Let me show you guys some of the footage that was released to the media. In Tazumuddin, Bangladesh, 45% of its population was lost due to the storm, which is insane. So that's 167,000 people. Winds were up to 240 kilometers. There were reports showing that weather services did not share information of the upcoming storm in time to save people. Pakistan was not prepared for the storm at all.